I have
one that has not. Okay, I'm going to call the school committee meeting of this Thursday, December 14th to order. We have a lot on our agenda today, some of which will be very quick, some of which will be very exciting. We have a plethora of fifth graders here to present on Birch Meadow, and we're very excited to hear about that. But before we get to that, we will start with the review and just hopefully approval of two memorandums of understanding we have with our custodian union and our secretaries union. And then we'll jump into section B, at which point we're going to take one item out of order, and that is our student report, because Sachi's got a lot going on. So we'll take her out of order, then we're going to jump into Birch Meadow and hear all about the composting program at Birch Meadow from the wonderful students that are here and their families. At that point, we will then go back to the rest of reports after we finish with, well, we'll do consent agenda, and we'll go back to the rest of the reports that we have per our standard process. When we move to new business, we have a discussion about Northeast Education Consortium. There is a rather large facilities issue at one of the buildings there that we need to talk about. And then we will move on to our FY24 Q1 human resources and financial updates. We will then move to a school committee budget priorities discussion, and finally finish with the dyslexia early identification, notification, and escalation process review and discussion. At which point we will adjourn. So I said all that very quickly. Hopefully it made some sort of sense. But we were going to go ahead and get ourselves started here. We do have the town manager, Fidel Maltez, online as well, so when we do the votes on these discussions, we will do a roll call vote. Everything else, we have the full committee here, so we don't need any roll call votes for anything else besides that. So, with that said, and everything else going on, I missed something I was supposed to do, so. And it's beeping at me, so who am I missing? There we go. There we go. Okay, so our first agenda item is our custodians contract. And in our conversations with the custodians, once again, similar to the teachers, they were fruitful, productive. Dr. Milichewski, our director of HR, Michelle, and I had the chance to sit down with them every so often, through caucus and other conversations, we move this forward. What we end up doing, as we do with many of our unions, is look through them and look at them versus our comparable communities, the FinCon comparable communities, and we did some adjustments. So we ended up adjusting the steps to be a standard 8-step scale, as opposed to what it used to be, which is 1 through 4, then 10, then 15, then 20. So people wouldn't get raises for 6 years. And now they're going to have it through those 8 years. And then we also, for the second and third year, went with COLAs of 3 and 3.75. And then we made some adjustments from a vacation time perspective. In particular, because buildings are almost closed, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are going to be, as long as it's a business day, a paid vacation day. I think that's the substance of that one. Dr. Milichewski, am I missing anything?
Nope, it's perfect.
Okay. Committee, any questions, any thoughts, any concerns? Okay. So we will move to the motion, and then we'll move to the vote. So, Erin?
Motion to approve the 7/1/2024 through 6/30/2027 Reading Facilities School Custodians Contract.
Second.
Seconded by Sean. Okay, so roll call starting down there. Chuck?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Fidel?
Yes.
And it passes 7-0. So thank you very much. The second one, no, the neat pad is not muted. We're good. So thank you for the note, but we're good. Otherwise, Fidel could not have heard me to vote, so that's also good. The second one is our Secretaries Association, and that one followed a similar path. There were a few minor updates from a contract language perspective that we went through and agreed with. They also, similar to the custodians for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, will be having paid holidays as long as it's on a working day. And we reworked their salary scale as well. Not to the degree, but in a very similar way. So the first year is a reworked salary scale. Then the second year and the third year, because there's 2 levels for our unions, level A will have 5% and 5%, and level B will have 5.5% and 5.5%. And both of those fit within our multi-year forecast from a financial plan perspective. So that was important. I think one of the things I heard, I'll just echo this, I don't think it's out of turn, from one of the secretaries in the room was they felt valued. They felt really valued for the first time in a long time. So that was great, but also it was great that it actually fits in the financial plan as well. So, Dr. Milichewski, did I miss anything on that one?
Nope.
Okay. All right, any questions or thoughts from the committee on this one? Erin, will you start with the motion on this, please?
Motion to approve the 7/1/2024 through 6/30/2027 Reading Administrative Secretaries Association Contract.
Second.
Seconded by Sean. And once again, we'll do roll call. So I'll start at the end. Chuck?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Fidel?
Yes.
And this one passes 7-0 as well. So great. Thank you all for that, and we can now move on. Fidel, you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to drop, but knowing you've got plenty to do, so.
Good night.
Okay, so before we move into our Birch Meadow composting, we do want to take out of order, so I'll ask him for a motion to take out of order the student report. So Sachi can give us her report and then go about the studies that she's got to get done. So can we get a quick motion on that?
Motion to take out of order item B, report 1.
Sure, that works.
Second.
Seconded by Sean, all in favor? And it passes, so Sachi, you've got the floor.
Thank you. So I have a couple highlights from the past weeks. The Interact Club, which is an extension of the Reading Rotary and is led by our very own Miss Donahue, Spanish teacher, held a Thanksgiving bake sale on November 15th and 16th from 3:05 to 3:35 on Main Street. And they made $300, which were all donated to the Reading Food Pantry. That's super cool. And then Girls Rising Club, which focuses on feminism and women empowerment, participated in the Festival of Trees and wrapped up the fall clothing drive, and I heard it was a great success. And then the Arts Department continues with amazing performances and events to include the Dickens Fair, Songfest, and soon the 5-Star Theater auditions. We just had our winter concert yesterday, and I think it went really well. This weekend we will also be caroling, so if anyone would like to book us for a time slot, we'll come to your house and sing holiday carols, and I think people really tend to enjoy it. And then next week, the Select Choir, as well as the school jazz band, will be visiting middle schools to promote the arts department. For the Orbit and podcasting, journalism students and members of the Orbit Club have collectively posted more than 40 news items at rmhsorbit.com. Included among them are 7 new episodes of the Orbit Conversation podcast, which were produced using equipment acquired through an REF grant. Student advisory met this week, and while we talked about a lot of things, our primary focus was on flex periods. There's been a rumor that flex is going to be going away forever, which would be detrimental to students who do a lot of extracurriculars and don't have studies, such as myself. But it appears it won't be permanently going away, which I think is super great. And then winter sports are underway, and I've heard some good things from the wrestling team. Upcoming events are, obviously winter break is around the corner, December 22nd, Future Freshman Night, January 23rd, and then RMHS is partnering with Fidelity to bring financial literacy sessions to students in grades 11 and 12 in the month of January. Topics include saving, spending, and investing, and then there is no commitment to work directly with Fidelity after attending these educational sessions. It is meant as a tool to inform and teach about financial wellness. Fidelity is also providing a presentation for parents and caregivers at the January PTO meeting. So, yes, that is it.
That's a lot. Any questions?
I just want to thank Sachi. I know you have a ton going on this busy time of the year, so appreciate you making time to be here tonight and share those
It's no
updates.
problem. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we return to our regularly scheduled program. And Dr. Milczewski, I'll let you introduce Birch Meadow and Dr. Burnham and the team. So,
Dr. Burnham, come on up. We'll give you the horse. I am very excited. The energy in this room tonight is different than most school committee meetings, and it's really exciting to see our students and the leadership from our students. So we are all very excited to hear about the work that you've led. I think some of the committee members here have heard about what you've done, others haven't. And also, as you know, that tonight your presentation is being recorded live, so people at home can watch, and then you can watch back after too. So you are Reading famous after tonight, and we cannot wait to hear about your leadership at Birch. So, Dr. Burnham, take it away.
no pressure, I mean, seriously.
They are going to thrive, I can tell.
Thank you, Dr. Milczewski. I have to tell you, I am so proud of the group of students that we're going to have up here tonight. They've been serving as leaders on something that's been really important to Birch Meadow, and I think really important to Reading Public Schools. As you know, Birch Meadow's been the first school to fully compost all student food waste at our cafeteria. And these students have served as some of our lead student ambassadors. And what our student ambassadors do is they take a training on how to do this, and then they work with our younger students during lunchtime. And so as our younger students come up, these are some of the students who are in charge of training them so that they become our future ambassadors. So they've worked really hard on this presentation. They put together the slides and rehearsed it with me this week, and I know they're going to do a great job tonight. So I'm going to invite them all on up. You know what I'm going to do to make it go easier? If you kind of all want to come up and stand with me, and then I'll introduce you as you come up and present your slides, okay? So the first thing that we're going to hear about is why we compost at Birch Meadow, and these two slides are going to be presented by Britt Flaherty and Ellie McCormick.
Hi, my name is Britt Flaherty, and you may be asking why compost. Here's why. All students eat lunch at school. After we are finished eating, we have waste that we need to dispose of. Did you know that one elementary student produces 1.13 pounds of food waste each week? That's 40.68 pounds of food waste for one student each school year. That means one fifth grader produced 244 pounds of lunch waste while at elementary school. Composting is a way to turn some of that waste into usable materials and reduce the amount of waste going to landfills. The compost portion of our waste gets turned into humus. Humus provides nutrients back to the soil, which creates richer soil for growing plants, fruits, and vegetables. Composting not only teaches kids about the environment, but makes us aware of how much waste is produced by our school lunches. Composting ambassadors from 4th and 5th grade help younger grades learn how to separate their waste so they can continue composting in the future.
Hi, I'm Ellie McCormick, and I'm going to add a few more things about why we compost. Composting also reduces greenhouse gases, which is much better for the environment. Also, the State Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP, established a regulation about food/organic waste disposal. On November 1st, 2022, Mass DEP decreased the allowable amount of weekly food waste to no more than a half a ton per week. Lastly, composting is much cheaper than recycling or trash disposal. These are just a few of the reasons why composting is important, not just for people at Birch Meadow, but everyone.
Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Ellie. Now we're going to have Penny Okarma and Owen DeCroto let you know about the history of our initiative at Birch Meadow. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Penny Karma, and I'm going to be telling you about how the idea of composting started at our school. In January of 2022, the initial idea of composting at schools was proposed by Reading Compost. Our very own principal, Dr. Burnham, volunteered our school, Birch Meadow, to be the pilot or test school. Over the year 2022, there were many meetings about the composting with Dr. Burnham, Reading Compost Group, STEM Coordinator Heather Leonard, RPS Facilities, RPS Food Services, RDWP, and RDPH. When we first started, Wednesday was known as Compost Day because it was the only day we composted. This was also when the parent volunteers would come in. We now compost every day. Thanks to our parent volunteers, 4th and 5th grade students, and staff at Birch Meadow, we have now opened composting to all grades in our school. Composting is very important to our environment, and we are very glad our school was able to be the first school to do it.
Hi, I'm Owen DeCroto. The composting was only on Wednesday until they opened it up for all the grades. It only started with 4th and 1st grade students. Now it's going through K through 5 grades. They used to only take adult ambassadors. Now they take student as ambassadors too. Every week, Black Earth collects the composting material.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Penny. Now we're going to have Lucy Balicki talk about how it works at Birch Meadow.
Hi, I'm Lucy Balicki, and I'll be telling you about how it works at Birch Meadow. Student ambassadors use a composting station made by local Eagle Scouts. This station has 3 containers, one for liquids, one for compost, and one for trash. All of these are being used to compost correctly. Student ambassadors are located on the side of the room to help people dispose things in the correct containers. Student ambassadors help people compost and put things into the right places. If people don't need help, they can compost by themselves. All of the little things student composters do for composting each day helps Reading have a much better environment. Hopefully, more schools start composting for a healthier and better environment for Reading.
Thank you, Lucy. Now we're going to have Michaela Austin and Anna Henneberry let you know about what requirements we have for student ambassadors at Birch Meadow.
I'm Michaela Austin, and these are student ambassador requirements. Student ambassadors must be identified by their teachers as having leadership qualities. Student ambassadors must have completed training. Student ambassadors must be willing to help engage with younger students and coach their waste disposal steps. Student ambassadors must be aware of what gets composted and what doesn't. Student ambassadors must be responsible.
Hi, I'm Anna Henneberry, and these are a couple more reasons. These are a couple more things that student ambassadors have to be. Student ambassadors must be responsible. Student ambassadors must be willing to help younger students do the right thing. Student ambassadors must be kind to younger students. Student ambassadors must help younger students. Student ambassadors must help the cafeteria stay clean. Student ambassadors must be responsible 4th or 5th graders.
Thank you, Michaela and Anna. Last up, we have Margaret Smith, who's going to let you know the benefits of being a student ambassador and why we use that model.
Benefits of the Student Ambassador Model. Student ambassadors have the opportunity to develop and use leadership skills. Younger students build connections with older students, and the model ensures the composting initiative is self-sustaining as younger students not only learn how to compost, but learn how to be future ambassadors by working alongside the current student ambassadors. Student ambassadors teach others how to compost so they can remember how to do it. Composting can really help the earth, but it is also important to teach others how to do it. The composting ambassadors help by showing younger kids where to put food scraps. The kids are learning from the older kids. We demonstrate every week by coming down to the cafeteria and helping the kids compost. Remember, composting helps the earth, and every helper makes a difference.
So just a couple next steps that we're doing at Birch Meadow. In January, we're going to be hosting the Parker Middle School Environmental Club as they come down and check it out because they're trying to duplicate this potentially at this school. We're happy to offer student expertise and voice to other schools in Reading as they start to look at this initiative. And we're working with our 5th grade teachers to continue creating connections between our science curriculum and the composting initiative more overt. So those are our next steps, and I'd like to give a round of applause to our students if I could.
Great job. I think Derek's going to add a little bit as well, right?
I'll turn it over to Dr. Milczewski.
Oh, Dr. Milczewski?
Want to start? And then we can.
You can jump in and we'll ask questions and whatnot.
Perfect.
Please don't go anywhere yet.
We have some questions and feedback for the group here too. We had some questions coming in, but I think you've shifted maybe a little bit of what we're thinking with your presentation. So first, I want to say thank you to all of you for tonight coming and also for your leadership in the Birch community. A couple of things that really impressed me around your leadership. First, people have been talking about composting in this community for a long time. This is my 3rd year here. I remember on my first day, people were talking about composting, and no one had been able to bring it into action until all of you have been able to do this. So I'm really impressed that there's been an idea that people have kicked around that finally you are able to get into action. I'm also impressed that you were able to get an idea, get into action, and then what we call scale it up, to be able to build it out. More days, the whole school. So you're able to take an idea that you've built out, and I'm going to say take it even a step further. You've now given us a model that we can use in our other schools. So a few of you spoke about wanting to build this in other schools. We now have a model of something that works that we can then try in other schools. So I just want to give you a ton of credit in your leadership because we tried to do this and we didn't have success without you. So thank you for doing that. I also want to thank you for your presentation tonight. You were well organized, you were well spoken, you worked well as a team. And I also have to say, you really have me hooked on the problem. 244 pounds per student? That's a lot per times, around 400 students. That is a lot of waste per year. And we multiply that by how many schools we have a big problem that we have to solve. So I think you really hooked us with that in the beginning. My question is, a couple of you talked about the program being self-sustaining. Now, I worry when we lose leaders like you next year. I feel good that, we're going to have maybe a Coolidge and Parker will be in good hands, but I worry that this program might not have as much strength in the leadership without you at Birch. Can you help me to see kind of how do you have confidence that this program can be self-sustaining this year based off of the work that you've done this year?
Anybody has an answer? Yeah, come on right up.
So I feel like We also have a lot of fourth graders that are really willing to step up and help the school like we're doing right now. And I know a lot of them, they're really, they're full of leadership skills and they're really kind to younger students. So I think really we kind of built a legacy, and then the other student, the fourth graders, they're gonna step onto this like podium that we created for them.
Words.
Oh my God, the words and the vocabulary.
Awesome answer.
I'm going to give the committee a chance to answer questions too. And our biggest challenge for trying to get this in the other school right now is to figure out how to fund it, right? Because it costs a lot of money for us to partner with someone like Black Earth Compost to come and pick up the compost every day, and to pick it up enough where we're not leaving big buckets of compost around the building. So that's the challenge that we're trying to figure out. So we'll keep you posted too as we try to solve that problem. That's what Dr. Pinto is trying to work on, and we have a lot of help, but that's our biggest challenge. But I'm very excited and thankful for your leadership, and now I want to come see it in action too. So I'll come by one day and see you all do it. So thank you.
All right, Sarah, you had a question?
First of all, I am so impressed by your presentation skills. It is so hard to get up in front of a room of people you don't know, especially grown-ups. Many grown-ups can't do what you guys did tonight. You just did an amazing job, so I just want to praise you for that. And so much information, so much data. The presentation was amazing. One of my questions is, I think Dr. M spoke about it a little bit, but you guys have done such a good job at Birch. I wonder, there are probably some things you could teach the middle school and high school students as they're trying to think about this, and I wonder if you have any tips for when they're starting to think about that. Do you guys have any ideas?
Like we said, before the student ambassadors took over, we had adult ambassadors. So adults could come into this school and teach them how to do it and then see how they do on their own.
Great idea. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions for anybody else?
Great presentation.
We just want to thank you again for coming. I echo all of Sarah's comments. It was really impressive to see you stand up and speak, work your way through the microphone issues as well, and in some cases, the slide moving or not moving, as the case may be. You did a great job. You're really impressive, and thank you. Maybe you all can be ambassadors at Coolidge next year, those of you that are fifth graders, right? Maybe that'll be one of the next steps as well, in addition to Parker. So thank you all, and parents, I know you're proud. I can see it off your faces right now, so great job. Yes. We always, when we do these, we always have a picture before we leave. So we'll have the school committee up here and have the students come join us. Dr. Burnham, come join us. And then maybe one or two of the parents want to take pictures. Or 20 of the parents, as the case may be. This is the center over here. Work over on the kids. Don't make them move.
We're going to say composting on 3? All right, 1, 2, 3. Composting.
Can we have, like, every meeting has to have an elementary presentation?
Every time we have kids here, we say that.
So much more fun. Every meeting.
That was a high bar.
That was a high bar. There was a lot of big some SAT words in those presentations.
They wanted this.
Challenging us to leave a legacy. I love it.
Wow. Some of my 30-year-old project managers aren't that eloquent.
The gift that keeps thinking.
Great
Okay.
job.
You know it's coming from.
We now return to our regularly scheduled agenda. Boo. Boo.
That was the pinnacle.
There we go. We hit the high point at the beginning, and here we go. All right, so we have our consent agenda, so we'll start with a motion for that.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any discussion, any items? Nope. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. So we'll now move on to reports, and starting with Dr. Pinto.
Oh, I don't have anything to report.
No report? Okay. Dr. Hardy?
Just wanted to share a quick thank you. We have a group of teachers this year that are participating in a literacy professional learning opportunity that's we're offering through Hill for Literacy. And this is a pretty robust, intensive training. And we have over 30 teachers participating. So I just want to send a shout out to those staff, you know who you are, for doing this. It is above and beyond their normal responsibilities. There's a good amount of work in between the course sessions for them to prepare. And we're so appreciative of their investment in continuous learning and being open to expanding their knowledge and understanding about what high-quality literacy instruction looks like. So we hope later in the year to be able to share out with you some of the successes from that training. But I just want to acknowledge the staff that are taking that on this year.
Thank you. Dr. Milczewski?
Great. Two quick updates. First, just wanted to, we announced to the RMHS community last week that we removed the interim tag from RMHS principal, Mrs. Jessica Callanan, and named her the permanent principal. Mrs. Callanan just signed a 3-year contract for the role. In the letter I sent out to the RMHS community, I shared a lot more detail, but just want to hit a couple of points I think were important in our decision making. The first piece, that criteria for us, was just her performance over the past year and a half. I think those who have been in RMHS see the work that she's been able to move forward. Some of the forward-facing initiatives of now getting 4 innovation pathways in the pipeline up and moving forward, creating 60 senior internships with community partners, for last year having 80 students participating in that program, and then more in the day-to-day, revamping our school-based instructional leadership team to empower our department heads to take true sort of instructional leadership within their departments, which we think is leading to a higher quality of teaching and learning in all of our classrooms. Her performance, also pairing that with the feedback that we've heard throughout the past year and a half about her performance, I think made this sort of an easier decision. I spent time, particularly in the past 3 weeks, meeting with as many staff members at RMHS who would either share feedback in writing or sort of meeting one-on-one. I spoke with over 70 staff members, meeting with the parents on both the PTO board and also on the school council, and also meeting with our student advisory committee. The words that continue to come up around strong communicator, strong work ethic, great listener, someone who can bring the team together, someone who is able to, has strong organizational management skills, someone who's really creating a well-run and efficient building. Also important for us was knowing just that there's been, we know, a significant turnover in that role in the past decade and even beyond. Jess is committed to the role, committed to being in the school. She shared with me that she loves the role, loves this school, sees it as a great school, and sees it also filled with potential to move forward. So I think I speak on behalf of almost everyone that I've spoke with in the community on this, that we're thrilled to have a leader of her caliber, not only this past year in the interim role, but also moving forward. I am very excited about the future of RMHS under Ms. Callanan's leadership. So just a shout out and congratulations to her, and a thank you for her for stepping into what we know is a very difficult and challenging role, and a thank you to her family too, as we know that role comes with significant sacrifices with time as well. But very excited about that announcement, and that so that our interim tag is removed immediately. 2 groups of staff I just want to thank tonight. We had the contract, we ratified the contract for both custodial staff and secretaries, which just gives me the chance just to thank both of those bargaining units. I think if anyone's walked into our buildings, I think you'll see that we have some of the cleanest buildings that you can see out of the schools in the area. That doesn't happen, by accident. Our custodial team is working around the clock, behind the scenes, often not looking for accolades or praise, but just behind the scenes, really working hard to keep our buildings in tip-top shape, which we know has an impact on the outcomes for our students. So thank you to our custodial team for the work that they do day in and day out. Also like to thank our secretaries. The work in the schools, everything floods through them. If you've ever been in the office, you know they can multitask better than anyone, and they're multitasking on high stakes, important items. And just they all do it really, really well. They are, kind of the heart that keeps the schools moving forward, and just appreciate the work that they do. They're also, not only keeping the school moving forward, but they're the face that people first see when folks come into the building and interact with. I just appreciate how they approach their work and the quality of work that they do. So this just gave me a chance to thank both of those bargaining units for, across the board, the excellent work that they do for our community, often unsung heroes in their work.
Great. Any questions? Okay, so we'll move on to liaison reports. Chuck?
Charter Review Committee met Monday night. A lot of good discussion, but, we're just kind of going through the articles, but nothing school-related at this point. But long meeting, a lot of good discussion. Recreation, we met Tuesday night, and we had our usual discussion on items, but there was we did get a presentation from John Feudo from the Y on the ARPA. It was an ARPA presentation on the monies they received for all the programming they're doing for special education, swimming, and so it was a very good presentation. So.
Okay, thank you. Carla?
Great, thank you, Tom. Just a quick update for Killam. Our designer is fully on board. We have a signed contract. We're really, really excited to be working with them. We're really happy with our team, with our OPM and our designer. We are starting on Monday our executive team meetings that we affectionately call our Scrum, Killam Scrum. And we will be starting, we're obviously in the feasibility phase, so we'll be talking about site conditions, and we'll be working with facilities in this first part, and also with teachers in the educational plan, and starting that whole visioning process of what we want that school to look like. So we're really, really excited about it.
Thank you. John?
No report tonight.
Erin?
No report.
Sarah?
No report.
Tom? No report. Okay, so now we'll move on to new business, and we'll start with the Northeast Consortium budget facilities issue. And Dr. Milczewski, I think you have some introductory comments.
Great, I do. So good evening, everyone. So I will start by, I'm going to give a little bit of a context tonight on the North Shore Education Consortium, just to both kind of a budget and facilities issue. There's a lot of materials in your packet. In your packet, you'll have both the annual report, which is good for you to learn more about North Shore Education Consortium if you're not familiar with a lot of the work that they're doing. And second of all, also a PowerPoint regarding the HVAC project. Really thankful tonight that Fran Rosenberg, the executive director from North Shore Education Consortium, is on with us tonight on Zoom to answer any questions that the committee may have too. I'm going to give just a very brief, again, probably 2-minute overview of just what the project is about and the need, and then I'll open it up to questions that you can either ask myself as a board member or to Fran as well. So as you know, we are a member district for the North Shore Education Consortium, about 20 members in the district, and I am also serving as the representative on the board. It is all, the districts can elect to have, a couple of different stakeholders as their representative. I think all the communities have their superintendents as their board members. Dating back to 2009, there's been a identified HVAC project need to update the HVAC systems at North Shore Education Consortium, or NEC, I'll just refer to. This has sort of been the can has been kicked down the road, I think, by the board, by the administration for a variety of reasons, and it's got to a point now where this is an urgent project for student needs. The price tag, unfortunately, is $11.5 million. The plan to be able to fund that comes through a $9.4 million bank loan, and also then covering $2 million out of reserves. So the ask for us, or for the board, is to fund a portion of that money from the $2 million for reserves to kind of help get the project or move the project forward. It looks like there's a couple of different models that have been kicked around on how to finance that $2 million split across member and non-member districts. It looks like the most kind of recent proposal would be a tiered model based on enrollment. We have 5 students enrolled at NEC, which would be a one-time assessment of $32,000 for Reading. That could shift, give or take, kind of how the feeling of the board, which the board vote would be next week. I'd like to share that I, as a board member, am in full support of this project, and I'm in full support of this project for two reasons. One, financially, right? If if we were to ever decide to move away from the consortium, we would be paying a lot more for these same services for our students than we would be even with the $32,000 one-time assessment and also the cost, the tuition increases that will rise up for, as a result of to make up for the $9.4 million loan. So financially, it makes sense for us. And also secondly, I think it makes sense in our commitment to students. So we have some students with some significant needs in the program, some students with some serious medical need. And I think that just the current state of affairs related to the HVAC system is having an impact on the experience for our students. So I think it is the right financial investment for us, and it's also, I think, the right thing to do for students. I did not feel, right as the board representative, kind of moving forward with sort of a yes vote for this project without having sort of the support of the board. So I wanted to just bring it to your attention tonight for any discussion and hopefully sort of a vote of support as well too. So I'll pause there. I'll introduce Fran. Fran, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to share that maybe I have missed, and then we'll open up to questions or comments from the board.
No, I think that's a good quick summary. I just want to say, hi, everybody. I'm sorry to be here under these circumstances. I would much rather be sharing the annual report and all of the positive work we've done. Reading has been a member district, I believe, since the inception of the consortiums 50 years ago. I've been executive director for 11 years, and we've never needed to come to districts in the middle of the year in this way to ask for money outside of our normal budget cycle. This is a project that was neglected for a while. In 2017, we created a capital plan. We planned to do the project in 2020. At that point, we thought it was $1 million project and we had funding in place. We all know what happened in 2020. And given circumstances beyond our control, a $1 million project became an $11 million project. All of the details are in the PowerPoints that have been shared with our board. Unfortunately, because this building houses our most severely disabled students, there are very, very few other options for cost effectively educating these students. And we are on the edge of a catastrophic failure of the system. It costs $30,000 every time a part breaks because it is so obsolete. So really the sense of urgency and timing has really forced us into the position of making this ask mid-year, even though we're cognizant of all of the other budgetary and financial pressures that districts are facing. So I'm happy to answer, any specific questions that folks have. I know there have already been a lot of emails exchanged, and I really appreciate Dr. M, as the children call you, Dr. M's support for the consortium as a board member.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Carla?
A quick question. So if a district who decides that they do not want to participate in this, does the cost and they withdraw potentially, what's the next step with that? Do the remaining districts pick up that additional cost, or is there another contingency?
In order for the consortium to take a bank loan, we need 2/3 of our board to vote in favor of that. So if the board votes against it, we won't be able to proceed with a loan. We won't be able to complete this project. Worst case scenario, the system fails and the students that you have placed in that program, the district would need to find alternative educational settings for them. In terms of withdrawing from membership in the consortium is a more complex discussion. There are requirements, fiduciary requirements around withdrawing your membership, and there are long-term financial implications of that as well in terms of the benefits of membership.
I just want to add one thing too, was that, so at the recent meeting, we had talked about a couple of different models for the one-time assessment, starting with just based on a per pupil sort of assessment base. That would have been for some districts a assessment of over $300,000, which I think would have been hard for some districts to get behind. There was also a model where it was $100,000 potentially for just every district across for member districts. I think some of the smaller districts who have, in some cases, only 2 students, us with 5, that $100,000 was harder to swallow. I think this model that's come out recently that board members have kind of seemed to coalesce around is the idea of a tiered model based off of enrollment, which seems to be, I would say, from the recent conversations, the board meeting, board members there's more appetite and they seem to be getting behind. So I would be surprised if there wasn't more than 2/3 support, given how that conversation has progressed. And I appreciate how Fran and her team have gone back and kind of just sharpened this model over the past couple of weeks to one I think you're going to get more support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. I just had and I haven't had a chance to look at in detail the annual report yet, but I think you mentioned that you kind of put together a capital plan in 2017, I think I heard. How is the rest of the physical plant in terms of, is this the first thing that's going to come down the road, or are there other things that could potentially show?
It's a great question. So the consortium, again, I really regret if this is your first introduction to the work we've done on behalf of your district for all of these years. But we basically run 7 different public day school programs for students with different disabilities. We own some of our properties. We rent some of our properties. This particular issue is happening in our oldest and largest property that we own. It's where the Kevin O'Grady School is, the Recovery High School, and our business offices. This was the biggest project in that capital plan. And so it was delayed time and again, as often has happened. We do not anticipate any other major capital projects. This project, we're calling it an HVAC project, but as you can see in the materials and the board has discussed extensively, it's replacing the roof. It's replacing outdated electrical boilers, heating, cooling, air ventilation systems in a building that serves multiply handicapped students. I think it's also just important to note that collaboratives, and this has come up in many collaboratives across the state, did not receive direct ESSER support, cannot apply to MSBA, and do not have any other funding streams for capital. We're doing a lot of advocacy with the Department of Education and state legislators on this issue, because right now the only recourse for a collaborative is to turn back to its member districts. We're looking for other options so that this kind of thing doesn't happen for us or for other collaboratives in the future. This is very unusual. You know, again, I've been in this role for 10 years. Dr. Doherty, previous superintendent in Reading, was the board chair for a number of years. We've never needed to come back to member districts in this kind of way before. This was sort of a perfect storm compounded by the after effects of the pandemic and the escalating price of projects of this sort.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple other questions here as I look at some of this. So first of all, thank you, Fran. I just want to assuage you. This is not the first time we've talked about Northeast Consortium, and a lot of times it's been positive by looking at the annual report. So I just want to make sure that you know that as well. You know, I think you saw the email I sent Dr. Milichewski about the planning, right? One of the things that I look at this, I'm saying, okay, there was a plan in 2017. For 2020, that happens. Everything exploded after that. That happens. But what I go back to is 2009, right? And here in Reading, we have a process with our finance committee where 5%, it's the next couple of years or the next year and a half, it's going to be 5.75% of our actual monies goes to capital. And it's just a policy. It happens. It's like clockwork, right? It sounds to me like the consortium does not yet have such a process and policy. Is this something, and I'm looking at Dr. Milichewski as well as I ask this question, that could potentially also coalesce the board towards more of a firm policy that we don't hit these kind of bumps along the road too much, and that we can keep things maintained in a better shape on a go-forward basis?
I think it's a very important question. You know, again, this is my 11th year at the consortium, and when I came, there was no capital plan, there was no capital fund, and there was no process for really looking at long-range planning. So we were moving in the right direction, arguably not fast enough, and in not in as comprehensive a way. The I think, message for myself and for our board is that every year when we discuss the budget and we discuss tuition increases, our number one goal has been to keep tuitions as low as possible because of the rising special education costs. So there wasn't a lot of appetite for building in additional funding to set aside something like that very reasonable, 5.7%. I think this is a lesson, right, in that delaying and putting Band-Aids on capital repairs and hoping that the problem will get better doesn't work, right? That we really need a much more robust process going forward.
Okay, I'd love to see that as an outcome, Tom, as you talk through with the rest of the board. I have two more questions. One is, you've talked about advocating to the state. Is that you personally, or is that the entirety of the board advocating to the state?
So I'm the president of MOEC, which is the Massachusetts Organization for Educational Collaboratives. That happens to be my role this year as well. There are 24 collaboratives. Many are facing similar challenges around capital planning. And so about 2 years ago, we had formed a committee and we had really started speaking with the commissioner and with folks at the Department of Education about this problem. Originally, the response we were getting is, well, you're part of your member districts. You're an extension of the public school system. Your district should be funding you appropriately. And I think we really pushed back and said it's an unfair ask, right? Because we have 20 member districts of very different sizes that are dealing with very different financial and political pressures in their own communities. And there needs to be some other options in addition to looking to member districts for support. So that advocacy is happening on a statewide level, but as you know, these things happen slowly. And so there's not really much immediate relief in sight for projects like this.
Ask that question for two. One, as Carla mentioned, we're going through our own MSBA process this year. Right, and we are well aware that going through that process also includes some state funding that comes with it, sometimes up to 40 or 50%. So obviously, this is a small ticket item relative to a large school, obviously, but clearly if the state's willing to help towns for those kind of projects, this one would fit into that, I think, Project B section or whatever they have. Accelerated Repair Program. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. So
there actually has been legislation proposed around including collaboratives. Right now, collaboratives can't apply directly to MSBA and can't get any support from MSBA.
So, okay. I think maybe that's something we might want to follow up on as a board as well with our constituents, with our people. And we should have that outreach as well, just in support of you. It only just makes sense because you are also a school. So if they're going to fund schools, they should fund schools, period. That's just me getting on my soapbox. The last thing I have is, we mentioned the fund before, and looking through, 603 CMR 50, there's a basic educational collaborative fund, and there's the ability to have a capital fund as well. Do we actually have a capital fund, and is that what we're pulling from as part of the reserves for the 1.5 to 2 million that we're then going to rebuild, or is it from the regular education collaborative fund we're talking about?
So it's both. When I look at things I might have done differently in my 10-year history, what we did right is in 2017, I said, we don't have a capital fund, we need to establish one. There's a long bureaucratic process to do that because of the membership of 20 districts. We did that in 2017. At that point, we started to put money into the capital fund, but we really underestimated what the need would be. And so as this project grew, we used that fund to do some of the first steps. We used that fund to go to bid and hire a project manager and an engineer to do the specs. We've used that fund for smaller projects, but when the magnitude of this project increased, it far exceeded what we had available. This initial influx of money is by pulling $2 million from our reserves before the loan kicks in. Our auditors have warned the board that leaves us in a precarious position. So there's urgency around having an initial influx of funding up front instead of spreading it all out over the life of the loan. And I'm not an accountant, so I hope that made sense.
That's okay. Thank you very much. We don't have an official motion that we've written out for this, so it's going to So I think maybe I think I'll just make a very simple one, right? And if anybody wants to amend it, please do. I move that we support Dr. Milichewski in his approval of the tiered rate system to support this capital need for NEC.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Any further discussions? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. So Fran, thank you very much for your time
Thank you.
and for your efforts here. On behalf of Reading and our students.
And it was an added plus to get to hear your wonderful Birch Meadows students. I learned something about composting tonight. So I do appreciate your support. I'd be happy to come back to talk about happier topics at some later date, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let me just put a plug in for the NEC's, the annual report. I think it gives a lot of really updates of what the school is doing too. So please take a little bit of time, anyone in the community, to read some of the work happening at NEC as a member district. So thank you for putting that together and very well done.
Where the money is going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to our Q1 2024 or FY24 Human Resources Update. And Michelle, please join us up here so you can actually get on Zoom as well. Yeah, grab. If it doesn't work, I have it over here too.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I already changed my slide on myself. So I appreciate the opportunity of getting to come tonight and give you an overview of our HR statuses as well as some of our recent initiatives. So in the packet, you'll find a comprehensive HR presentation that covers filled positions, open positions, leaves, terminations, time to fill statistics, and substitute rates. So today, I would just like to highlight a few key points for your consideration. The first being open positions. Traditionally, I use this time to discuss specific openings and our strategies about how we're marketing these positions. However, I am delighted to report that we currently only have 3 open positions across the district. These positions are one at RMHS for a para role and 2 vacancies for cafeteria worker positions. Other than that, we are all filled, which is fantastic. It's amazing. The second one is, so you can see right here with the current open positions, our second one is trends and areas of focus. I'm pleased to report there's no alarming trends or causes for concern in our data. The information aligns with our expectations and we have a clear understanding of the areas we need to continue to focus on. Our data trends are comparable to the previous years. In some instances, we have seen positive decreases in the volume of filled positions and leaves. And the third one would be our HR initiatives. So we are working on a few things right now, just to highlight a few. The contract negotiations, we're actively negotiating contracts with our 5 bargaining units, ensuring fair and beneficial agreements with both parties. As you know, we now have 3 completed ahead of the July 1st start date. Job description revisions. We are in the middle of revising job descriptions to better attract the right candidates. These descriptions serve as essential roadmaps for various people management functions such as recruitment and development. Onboarding efficiencies. We are ongoing efforts just to find efficiencies in our onboarding so that make sure that we're doing as quick as we can and it's a good experience for our new hires. And automation of trainings to enhance accessibility. We're working towards automating our training programs to make them more readily available to staff. So in conclusion, I want to assure the committee that our HR department is proactively addressing any current needs while planning for the future. And I also want to thank Andrew Gutchess and Kristen Cohen for their tireless work advancing everything that we're trying to cover in the HR space. So with that, I'm going to now open up to questions or any concerns you may have.
Maybe just one question.
Yes.
We made adjustments to the substitute rates. What's your view on how that's going and the impact that it's having?
I think that we are staying steady. We have come up from 2 years ago. We can see that, and so in here you will see our comparisons. So you will see that 21-22 school year, where we don't consistently have those double-digit numbers. We are coming back to that. Right now is a very hot time with our college students coming away. We do have our former central office intern who is coming to sub tomorrow in the district, who just got home from school. So we are seeing an uptick of this. I did note that this is through December 15th, because I'm only able to forecast out that far at this point with more accuracy.
This one's like really tough too. We think that's a key factor in moving us from 21, like 22 to where we are now, but it's like tough to pinpoint. Is that the exact thing that moved? If we were to go up a little bit more, would that swing more? We don't really know.
Yeah. The difficult part, and this is one of the graphs we included at the end, is just the lead time. So you'll see that the green is the same day, and the red is the day before. So that makes up for more than half of the absences. So it becomes increasingly difficult, even though if we sub, we're always actively bringing in new subs, becomes increasingly difficult when we are trying to fill them at the last minute because people are planning their day, they're subbing in other districts. So we are seeing success when we have, say, a 2 or more day lead time, but it's a little harder with if they're same day or morning of.
Does this data reflect, teacher were absent for more than one day? Does it reflect as one in here or the number of days? I don't know if I'm articulating that well. Same day is probably
Yes.
somebody who's ill, right?
So it will reflect each day versus if
As a
yes.
discrete absence?
Yes,
Okay.
because it is a discrete absence that need to be filled, even though the teacher may be out multiple days.
Right.
We are going to need a sub, and that's what we're basing the data on, is that need for the sub each individual day.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just make a comment. I know my child has come home even this past week and a half with so many absences from teachers, and everybody must be sick, which is really tough to, and hopefully less people will be getting sick.
Yes, we have seen an increase in sickness. I know there's quite a bit of different things going around, so I'm not surprised. So it is that time of the year where, the temperatures are changing, yes, washing the hands, where we are seeing people getting sick.
We're talking 3, 4, and 5 teachers absent per day, which is a whole day in some
Yes.
cases, so.
So
It's
we're
nothing-
having success filling, but, it is with the uptick in sickness and the season, that's where we're facing some difficulties.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Great job.
Go Peabody Hockey.
You can't say that too loud, Chuck, yeah. Okay, so now we'll move on to our financial update. Dr. Pinto.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So in your packet, you'll find the FY24 Q1 report for the period ending September 30th, 2023, and it's the first of 3 quarterly reports that are going to be furnished to you this year. So the purpose is to provide you with a snapshot of our fiscal condition, and the document has the same look and feel as you've seen previously, so you've been oriented this way in previous iterations. There are 4 sections to the document. The first is the financial summary by cost center. The next is the description of the cost center and drivers, followed by the transfers between cost centers. A little spoiler for Q1, there were no transfers. And the financial summary for special revenue funds, so that's revolving accounts and grants. So in each cost center, administration, regular day, special ed, district-wide, and facilities, it's important for you to know that the budgets have incorporated the new spending for the agreed-upon priorities from last year. They're proportional with last year's allocations. They're roughly aligned with a year-over-year spend, and they're approximately where we would expect to be at that stage of the year, so for the July, August, September time period. roughly what we would expect to see. So on the surface, there's nothing, no significant over or underspending noted, and the district appears to be on track and in good condition. The caveat here is that this is a snapshot in time, right? And so now this, we're now 2 months into the second quarter, and this really, Q1 represents really 1 month of school spending, right? The September timeframe. So what's next? What's next is I'm working on salary projections that'll carry us out to the end of the year, and the implications of initiating the spending priorities that we had for last year to this year, and then uncovering year-over-year spending trends, which I think will all be important information for you. So projections will be offered with the Q2 report. If there's anything that I uncover in the meantime, of course, I'll report it to you right away. The subsequent reports, so for Q2, which ends December 31st, will be delivered in February. And Q3, which ends March 31st, is slated to be delivered in May. I do have to thank Kate Finnegan, who is in my department, in my area, who has been invaluable. She's certainly a self-starter, got great organizational skills, and her institutional memory has been of great help to me. So thanks to Kate. I'll open it up for any questions.
Anybody?
No.
No transfers makes it easy.
Exactly.
So if it's appropriate, then I'd like to furnish you with a quick budget update for FY25, if I may.
Sure.
So just a overview of what's to come, right? So we're completing budget development and doing entry into Munis right now for the coming year, and then beginning work on the superintendent's FY25 recommended budget report that's to follow. Some important dates for you or for us include, so it's going to unfold over the balance of the month in December. January 4th is Budget Night 1, and so there's going to be a Q&A, a cost center presentations, and cost center slated for that night right now are administration and special education. January 11th is Budget Night 2, so there's a Q&A on cost center presentations and a public hearing slated for that night. So regular day, district-wide, and facilities will be presented on that night. January 18th is the next public hearing for the FY25 budget. And then January 25th is slated as the FY25 budget vote. And in February, we have a tentative date of February 28th, which is the FinCom, the Finance Committee's review of the FY25 school budget. And in April, there's the town meeting vote. So that concludes my report for this.
Well,
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the date between the 11th and the 25th. What did you say?
18th.
Every Thursday in January.
Every Thursday in January.
It's going to be a budget-heavy month.
Yep.
Standing invitation.
Yep. Come one, come all. Okay, that's actually a good foray into the next section of the agenda as well. So Dr. Milczewski, you want to start by kicking this off a little bit, setting the stage, and then we can have a brief conversation?
Great. So I do expect this to be a kind of a brief item tonight too. So in the past, we've set the stage for the budget process by asking the school committee for just budget priorities for the year going in. I think this year's a little bit different in the sense that we anticipate generally a level service budget. This is not the year we anticipate many adds to the budget. I think our priority and focus has been making sure that we can meet all of our contractual obligations. I think we've been really excited about the adds that we've been able to have over the past 2 years, and I think our role now is to sustain those while we're also meeting the contractual increases too. So with that said, we did want to just open the space for the committee to share as we go through kind of putting together the final touches on the FY25 budget, knowing it is, looking like a level service budget. If there is anything that you want us to consider in terms of priorities, things that we can consider this year, or also things just to flag for us, as we may have other opportunities to pursue grants or, end of year savings, things like that as well for us to have on our radar. So wanted to, to open up that space for the committee, and also to maybe temper expectations of the community in terms of this is not a year of ad as well too. So with that, just like to open up to any thoughts or perspectives from the committee.
John, go ahead.
Two things. Dr. Milczewski, I already shared this with you, and I think you've already said as much to me, but just maintaining our path towards free full-day kindergarten, universal full-day kindergarten, I think is, obviously a priority that I think we're all committed to. And then the second thing, I actually think this is a sort of a good timing to have a year where we don't have a lot of ads. We've done a lot to build data into our systems and processes recently, and I think it's probably appropriate for us to have some opportunity to see what that data tell us rather, before jumping into, new ads. So there's a timeliness to having a year where by necessity we have to probably hit pause. So I think that's, it's a good year for it.
Any other feedback or thoughts, Erin?
So I don't know that these necessarily have, a monetary value attached to them or not, but I think the Innovation Pathways work at the high school has been very exciting, so I'm hoping that that can continue to move forward. I know that they're looking to add a couple more pathways. The math pathways discussions that have begun, I would like to see some changes in place for next year. Some of that is curriculum that we may or may not be able to do for next year, but if it's a budget issue, I would want to know about that and have a discussion. And then the other, and I'm not sure exactly where this conversation stands, but middle school literacy I know is being looked at. And again, if that is going to, if the best path forward is going to be new curriculum, then I would hope that there's room in the budget for that.
Chuck?
So Aaron made me think, I just want to make sure that, and I'm sure, and I know there's already discussions going on, but it's probably good that it's in the narrative that we get Jess help, because she can't do her old job and her new job. I know we're working on that, but I think it's important to address that we're still focused on the pathways as well as, what she's doing as principal.
Chuck, I just want to follow up on that. I totally agree with you on that, and it's also not lost on us that we have had, 5 principals, 11 or 12 years too, that there's like some structural pieces that principals have asked for that may make the work and the role more sustainable too. So I think it's the innovation work and also just trying to make sure that whoever's in that role can be in that role and has the right supports around them. So I think it's a really good point.
Okay, I'll jump in now. I'm going to echo a couple of the things that have already been echoed, but I'll start with, first, let's make sure we can pay for our contracts. Right, so, which I think we know we can, but let's make sure we don't get in trouble there. Second, shortly after that is maintaining the ESSER staff. So making sure we build in for that appropriately, which again, I think we've already done, but that follows shortly after the number 1 in terms of maintaining status quo. I'm on board with Sean as well with making sure we continue down the path of the full day kindergarten model. Again, I think we're already covered there too, but just making sure that we maintain that. I'm also going to echo Erin's middle school ELA. I'm probably going to raise it a little bit. I think that's probably one of our more critical next steps from an implementation perspective. I don't know how much we'll be able to get done in semester 2 of FY24 versus FY25 and where it fits in the budget, but just something for us to think about. I think there is potentially some grant funding that, Sarah, you may have already been applying for as well. So I mean, I think that to me is one of the next big linchpins that we have to do. I'm holding back on the math stuff because I don't expect there's a lot of cost there from what we saw in the presentation, other than potentially stipends for group work or things like that to refactor things, which I think is relatively small money to get things done. And the last thing I'm going to throw in there that's a new one is making sure, new/old, making sure that the investments we've made in our special education programs are maintained or upped such that the savings we've seen over the last couple of years and the savings we think we're going to achieve over the next couple of years is maintained or improved. We've already seen a lot of invest to save happen in those places. This year even, we've seen that happen at Josh Wheaton. I want those things to stay or improve, not drop off, because they save us a ton of money, and it's the right thing for our kids to be in our schools as opposed to somewhere else. So if there's another, lead teacher we need to add, another SOAR teacher we need to add, another SAIL teacher we need to add, another breach, et cetera, because the population requires it, then let's figure out what we need to do to support that, because it's in general, less expensive than if we send them somewhere else. Okay? All right, I think we got that then.
Thank you.
Looking around, I don't see anybody else raising their hands, so.
We'll have more, but.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're on schedule, and we might even finish early. How about that? But that gives
Don't jinx us.
Dr. Hardy and Aaron plenty of time.
Yeah.
The keynote speech of the evening.
Stacy Forsman's here as well.
And Stacy's here as well,
So
great.
fortunate to have Stacy Forsman joining us. She is the literacy specialist at Wood End Elementary.
Awesome, so we're going to have our dyslexia early identification, notification, escalation, process review discussion now, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hardy to start us, and then we'll jump in from there.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to chat with you tonight about this work that is underway. We're very proud of what we've started and excited about the future plans, so look forward to sharing with you. I'm actually going to have Erin kick us off. So once she gets the clicker.
If not, I can jazz hands it if you want me to.
Jazz hands.
See if it works.
Pointed at Tom.
Point it right here.
Point it at Tom.
There you go.
Bingo, love it. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. I don't really know how to follow up that Birch Meadow crew. I don't think you can't really do it. Fifth graders are the best. So as you know, this is sort of the second in a series of literacy updates. We talked about implementation back in October, I think it was. So tonight we're really going to focus on early literacy screening and our literacy intervention plan. Lucky enough to have Stacy Forsman, literacy specialist at Wood End here. And we're really going to go over like an overview of the new tool, the process, give you a little bit of data, and talk through things. Point at Tom. So in this presentation, we'll give you an overview of the new screening tool that we're using that uses the DIBELS 8th edition. This is new for us in K through 3 in 2023. We are gonna talk through the new process for communication with families and caregivers, which is pretty robust. And we're gonna talk through the initial strategy and plan for intervention. You've all heard me talk a lot about systems and structures. This is one that we are building, and we're building it strategically with some real thought behind how we refine as we go along, and also how we're consistent across all 5 of our elementary schools. That's been a huge piece that my team has been working on this year, so we're really proud and excited of that. You've seen this before. You're going to see it again every time I come here because this is our draft instructional vision for literacy in Reading Public Schools. It's still in the draft phase. We just got some feedback from the high school folks, but really our work is grounded in this instructional vision, so everything we do comes back to this.
Awesome. All right. So as we get started, I just want to lace out some foundational information, and I want to clarify on some terminology. We always, when we dive in, I think sometimes we assume everyone knows the terms and what we're talking about, so we want to make sure that we set that foundation first. In Massachusetts, when we hear about literacy screening, we often hear the word dyslexia used as well. So one of the things that I want to just clarify about the universal literacy screening that is in place is that even though Massachusetts uses dyslexia as the foundation for sort of how they organize their regulations and law, the screener really has a broader goal than that. And we know that our students might struggle with early literacy for a variety of reasons. Some of those students, it may be due to a disability, and other students, there could be many other factors that contribute. So the screening tool is really there to identify risk and to allow us to ensure that every single student who might be struggling is given an initial intervention, that we're gathering more data about how the students respond to intervention, and then that we're able to respond quickly and with the proper testing or such as that's needed for students. So universal screenings are really an important part of how we operate so that we can ensure that we're intervening early. We know research is very clear that the earlier we intervene, the better we have better outcomes for students with or without disabilities, even students who might eventually need supports for a reading disability. The trajectory of outcomes for them can be significantly improved by early intervention. So we feel that this is a really important part of our work. It also is part of our larger Child Find obligation, which really starts for us at a very young age. That's why we offer our wonderful preschool programs. But we use this universal screening as a way to start to look for students who are struggling, but not as a way to determine eligibility for special education. And that's an important distinction to make. So the universal literacy screening is not a special education evaluation. It does not test for dyslexia. All it does is identify students who are at risk, and that allows us to take further steps. It's important to note that even though we're going to lay out for you sort of the procedures of our process, everyone on the team knows that they have an obligation that if at any point along the process they suspect that the student's struggle is really due to something beyond more just instruction, that it's disability related, that issue is raised and that a student can be brought to the SST team to consider a special ed evaluation at any point in this process. We do have certain points in the process, which we didn't before, where we now will make a referral to the SST process, the SST team. But I don't want you to think that that's the only point that students can enter that SST process. It's important to note. Okay. So there's two slides here that I will not read for you. One is the Massachusetts general law that sort of outlines the fact that school districts need to have a plan in place. And then the next one is DESE's response and the regulation that they have put in place. And the regulation really is what details what our obligation as a public school district is. DESE made a change to their regulation. You can see that it was effective July 1st, 2023, which is why some of our procedures have changed. I actually think that this has been supportive of us to putting some stronger practices in place. Additionally, because of this change, DESE did a little bit more work to identify screeners that they feel really do the best job at assessing risk, which is part of why we changed our screener this year, because the one we were using previously just didn't really meet all of the new requirements, and we wanted to ensure that we really were getting the best data possible. So you've heard me use the word universal screener a few times. Just at the highest level, what a universal screener is it answers three primary questions for us. Who's at risk? How significant is the risk? And then which skill areas need support? And as we go through our presentation tonight, you'll see that our universal screener and how we're using it do answer all of those questions. Just a little bit more about universal screeners. They are designed to predict the likelihood of reading challenges without the presence of a targeted intervention and support. So we're giving them ahead of that intervention or support. If the student's determined to be at risk based on the screening tool, then interventions will start right away. So all of our students that fall into the 2 risk categories will receive an intervention. The universal screening is used in conjunction with other data sets when our literacy specialists are determining the best intervention. Luckily, the tool we're using has a lot of really great embedded information that helps to target where the risk area is, so the literacy specialists have more data than ever when they're planning for those interventions. And then another really important piece of the universal screener is the progress monitoring component. So we'll talk a little bit about the frequency of that progress monitoring, but that's an important piece because the universal screener, while it's given to every single student across the school, only students that fall into certain categories are progress monitored in between the screening dates. I'll turn it back to Erin for a little more terminology.
Stacy's going to actually talk through the tool. So.
Good evening, thanks for
Oh,
having
Stacy.
me. Hopefully you can hear me day 1 after COVID, so keeping my mask on for Erin. So a lot of different terminology has been overheard and used when it comes to our universal screening. So just a little bit of clarification that Amplify is actually the company name, and the platform that Amplify uses to keep all of the data is the M-Class, and then the actual benchmark and progress monitoring assessment that we're using is the DIBELS 8th edition. And all of these meet the DESE expectations for the universal screener. And you may have remembered some of the terms early bird or cadence from last year. Early bird was the assessment we were using, the screener we were using for kindergarten. And Acadience, very similar to Amplify, was using a form of the DIBELS 8 through first, second, and third. And what is nice this year, as opposed to last year, is it's now consistent from K to 3, whereas before K was kind of doing a little bit separate type of screener. And now it's all kind of together for the K to 3. Acadience, we also had last year to add in a different subtest, the RAN, that wasn't involved in the actual Acadience assessment, whereas the Amplify this year includes the RAN portion, so that's nice. And we weren't able to keep track of data over multiple years using Acadience, whereas Amplify, we can keep track of data from one year to the next, so it's really nice to have it all in one big picture. And there also wasn't a progress monitoring feature in Acadience or Early Bird last year. So another nice feature with Amplify is that we're able to do the progress monitoring right there within the screener itself. So a little bit of an overview on what the DIBELS is. It has 6 different subtests that touch on phonological awareness, alphabetical principles, phonics, accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. So the only thing it's not touching on is vocabulary, but it's touching on all the other big ideas of reading. And all the different measures are listed on this slide. There's different ones depending on the grade level. So on the right side of the slide, you'll see the scale. So for kindergarten, it touches on which of these subtests that we're assessing in that school year. And as you'll see, many of them go from kindergarten into first, but then some of them are discontinued in first, and new ones are added in second and third, just based on where they are developmentally in their reading progression.
So in terms of professional development and training, in September, we had all literacy specialists trained by staff at Amplify on the assessment, how to administer it, all the different pieces, all the technology that went with it, and how to use the MClass platform to sort of manipulate some of the data. Special educators were also trained on how to use the tool, and over the course of the year, like, the special ed team is really figuring out like when to progress monitor with this, as opposed to the progress monitoring pieces that go along with their specialized programs. So there's some of that, but the same tool is able to be utilized by both and used in place. I mean, I'll say our literacy specialist team at the elementary and the middle schools, but at the elementary specifically speaking to tonight, are phenomenal. Giving them this tool and the training that goes along with it really leverages their knowledge and their skills in order to give kids exactly what they need. This was a really important piece. It was a move we felt really strongly about and pushed for, just to really give them the tool that would best fit what they do every day for our kids. Here's the universal screening schedule for all students. So in grades 1 to 3 this year, the beginning of the year was in October, due to training and scheduling with Amplify. We'll start it in September moving forward. Middle of year will be January, end of year will be May. In kindergarten, there's one update to the slides that we sent you previously. As we're analyzing the beginning of the year kindergarten data, which took place in November and the first week of December. We're actually going to do a middle of year assessment, even though it's not required by DESE. We think it's really important to sort of really keep track of the data this year and years beyond by doing a middle of the year on our kindergarten kiddos at the end of February, beginning of March. Then end of May, beginning of June, we'll do the end of the year with kindergarten. Progress monitoring is used for kids scoring in the well below and below throughout. That, again, is in the platform through the whole system.
Aaron, I know, so we have some of the data. I think an updated presentation we shared. I think the reason we didn't include the original packet was they thought with a first-time assessment, it makes sense for us to be able to contextualize some of the data too. So I don't know if we can just pause this screen for a second. I don't know, Tom, if you can just pull up the updated presentation, which I think we just shared, or do you want to share your screen? Is that easier?
Whatever's easier.
I don't think I have the updated presentation.
Okay. It's not the live link in there.
Sorry for the confusion,
Yeah,
everyone.
sorry.
It's okay.
I don't think it was attached, was it?
It's not attached.
Not
no.
attached.
All right, do you want to share your screen then?
Yeah, happy to. Zoom.
There's no link in it.
Give Sarah the share code. If Sarah has the share code, we can.
Let me stop it over here real quick.
Thank you. Join.
Share screen.
Do you need the code?
We will. All right, here we go. We're good now.
Okay. Would have cleaned up my desktop, my tabs here if I knew I was presenting. Awesome.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry
Again,
about
so we will send an updated packet that has this information, but again, we thought it was important for the community to have some of this data while we are kind of talking through it, because there's some, I think, misinterpretations of the data unless you have some, kind of voice on some of it too, so.
Yep, sorry, I just have to. All right. So as Erin just mentioned, ever evolving even over the course of this week, by reviewing the kindergarten data, we decided to add another screening point.
Presentation.
Yeah, presentation mode.
There we go. All right, we're there.
Awesome. So wanted to just give you a quick burst of information based on, that won't work, it's okay, I got it. Based on the beginning of the year screening, and this also gives you a little window into sort of some of the graphics that we see when we're in the M-Class platform, looking at the dibbles. See, I'm mastering my terminology. Looking in across how our students scored, this gives us a snapshot of like our kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. And you'll see that students are reported out in 4 categories: well below benchmark, at benchmark, and above benchmark. And so within this graph, you'll see that they provide us with the number of students in each of those categories, and then what percentage that is of the whole, and a nice color graphic to help us see that. So when we're looking at this, I want to clarify that this is every student in the school. This includes our students on IEPs who are receiving specially designed instruction to progress reading goals. So when our literacy specialists, working with Erin, reviewed the results for grades 1, 2, and 3, they went in and looked at the students that fell in the well below benchmark and the below benchmark categories. In looking at those students, they at first identified any student who is not on an IEP for reading and receiving reading support. If a student has an IEP and they have a math goal, they will still receive general education reading support. But students that have a reading IEP, they're already receiving the instruction that's tailored towards their particular needs. So what we have for you here is just showing you the students that are receiving interventions. We'll explain this a little bit further in the presentation, but students basically receive either a pull-out support, which is the more intensive intervention, or they receive in-class support. The in-class supports are provided by our tutors. The pull-out supports are provided by our literacy specialists. So for example, just to explain what you're looking at here, in the well below category for grade 1, we had 30 students that scored in that benchmark area. Of those 30 students, 25 are receiving pull-out support. So that means that 5 students had IEPs for which they already received reading support. So basically, all of those 30 students are receiving customized literacy support. It's just a matter of whether it's happening through Tier 2 intervention or an IEP. So this is our beginning of the year data, and we'll explain to you a little bit the supports that these students are receiving and the timing of that. And then we look forward to giving our next universal screening to see how our students progress.
So one of the important things that came out of the new DESE regulations was around communicating the results of the universal screening to families and caregivers. This was one of these spaces that gave us like a really great opportunity to build consistency across the schools in terms of the message that was going out, in terms of timeline that was going out, and keeping everything really consistent and tight. So before the screening process even started, all families received a notice at the end of September saying that, from their principals, that it just sort of explained the screening process and what it was, and that this is a part of what we do every year. And then communication of results was consistent in messaging in the timeline across 5 schools. So in terms of the communication after the screening process, students scoring below the benchmark got an email from the literacy specialist at each school that informed them of the results and the intervention plan, the Tier 2 intervention plan. Students scoring well below not only got a letter home informing them of the results, the intervention plan, and like when follow-up communication was going to happen, but our principals and literacy specialists actually made phone calls home to all those folks as well. We thought that was a really important thing. This is brand new. As a parent, I would want to hear it first before I got a letter in the mail, you know, giving results like that. So we thought that was a really important piece to this, and are really proud that it happened across all 5 schools. So response to the universal screening results. All students at or above the benchmark receive in-class core instruction from their classroom teachers. I'll say too, with ARC, kids are receiving targeted strategic instruction in toolkits and in small groups. So students below the benchmark have in-class support from the reading tutors at each of the buildings. They lean heavily on the Amplify resources, which are really targeted towards skills gaps and error patterns from the universal screen. They receive training from their building literacy specialists on how to get the resources, how to go into the program and find them. They all have access to all of their students, so can make adjustments as needed. And they're also being progress monitored once every 4 weeks. That is what DIBELS recommends. We're following all of the recommendations to the T. So folks that are scoring in the below benchmark category get progress monitored every 4 weeks. Students that are scoring in the well below benchmark category are getting targeted pull-out support from our literacy specialists in each building. We thought that was really important to give the kids who need it the most support from the folks who are the most trained and the most skilled in terms of the interventions that they're providing. So they're receiving support that's matched to their skills gaps, and they're progress monitored every 2 weeks. So we have progress monitoring data every 2 weeks for the kids who are scoring well below benchmark. And again, I mean, Dr. Hardy mentioned it, but our Tier 2 instruction is it's focused on students who are scoring in these 2 categories who aren't receiving special education support already in terms of like specialized reading instruction.
And as Erin mentioned, the students are progress monitored throughout the intervention, and that way the instruction that we're providing can be fine-tuned at any point. And then after the first 8 weeks of the intervention, we are taking a look at all of the data and seeing if students are making the expected progress. We're looking at the AIM line that the M-Class dashboard can provide for us, as well as other pieces of information that we can analyze in their progress monitoring results. And if the expected progress has not been made, we're going to be adding additional interventions. It could be more frequency of the services or adding in different intervention resources. And if after 2 rounds of the intensive intervention, the kiddos are not making the expected progress, then we would be talking about an SST referral to get some more information on what might be hindering their progress. So the next slide shows a little sample of what the M-Class can provide. It gives us an AIM line. So the first graph shows for a kiddo who was scoring below the benchmark, and the program can actually set up its own target for the benchmark the next cycle. So if it was beginning of the year and they were below, the target would be that middle of the year benchmark. And it sets up that AIM line, and the little dots are showing you the different progress monitoring check-ins. so that we can see, are they making enough progress that they are above that aim line? It can also adjust and make kind of like a custom goal for students, so that if the second example shows a well below score in the beginning of the year, the custom goal measures the expected growth of that student, so we can see in and of themselves how they're making the progress that would be hoped for. So those are just some samples of some of the data that we can see in the M-Class dashboard.
Aaron and Stacey, real quick on that one too. I know we talked about this too. So can you speak a little bit of how this like removes some of like the subjectivity to like the idea of like, is the student making progress? Is the student not making progress? Kind of what that looks like in terms of how goals are set.
Yeah, so this follows, this does all of the crazy calculations that Dibbles has in order, you can create an aim line using all sorts of different math calculations that Dibbles lays out. This actually does the work for you and provides a visual to see like, okay, is this kiddo making expected progress with the intervention required, or are they not? And then, like, let's make sure we're progress monitoring. So M-Class really lays out, Dibbles lays out what expected progress looks like. I will tell you, this is a kiddo who scored below in the coding, in well below in letter sounds, but came out well below in the composite score, so is receiving pull-out support from the literacy specialist, and this is how it's sort of being tracked, you can see.
So this is showing that they've already been remediated, right, as well, right? So
But that doesn't mean, that does not mean
they're out
after
of
the
the
8
risk
weeks.
area
Yeah,
necessarily, but-
like, we're not pulling support from this kid, we're not pulling any of the support the student receives, and we wouldn't for anyone. We're gonna see what happens in the next benchmark and reassess after that. So we have a whole bunch of points at which we are stopping and making sure, like, kids are receiving the right amount of support. Now, if those like small dots all fell below that aim line, like, that's an immediate, like, okay, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna change up? Does the student need more frequency? Does the student need a different intervention? And we need to look into it a little bit more in terms of tier 2 for the next series of 8 weeks. If still there's not expected progress, so it's under that aim line, then that would trigger an SST referral.
And as the elementary literacy specialist, we're meeting monthly to review the different intervention resources we're using, best practices. We're taking a look at the progress monitoring and the information that we have in front of us on our students, and also meeting after each benchmark to review the data too, and to discuss the intervention groups that we'll be working with. And we've also had discussions about adjustments to assessment windows for benchmarking and progress monitoring, just looking at school calendars and where the different 8 weeks fall and the different progress monitoring schedules, so that we can be consistent across the district.
I just want to add something on to what Stacey was talking about, I think, and Erin touched on this a little bit earlier. By being systematic and having the same procedures in place across our schools, it's giving our literacy specialists this opportunity to perform almost like a rapid improvement cycles, because they're able to look at students that scored a certain way in the screening, that have a certain skill deficit. And when they come together, they're talking about like, what are you doing? How are we targeting the student? What results are we seeing? And so when they see a student like the one that we saw in the graph, there can be a conversation of like, well, what really worked for that student? Why do you think this student made progress? And because they're all sort of working off the same platform, it's really a strong environment for professional learning amongst our literacy specialists. And as Erin pointed out, we're fortunate to have very good literacy specialists. But we know that when we're working with students that are struggling or students that have deficits, we as adults have to have a continual steep learning curve as well. And so I think that's one of the things I've been really encouraged with this year, is just hearing about how the literacy specialists have really coalesced as a team and are even more than ever sort of sharing learning, sharing resources to the benefit of our students.
I mean, building consistency has really been one of the goals for this year in terms of universal screening and tier 2 support. So there are a couple examples here of like the steps that we are taking. So again, the use of the tool is the same in general education and special education. It's available for special education in terms of progress monitoring. All students are getting benchmark K-3 using the same tool. I can't stress to you how amazing it is to have all of the data in one place, have it all look the same, like read the same, and know that that's going to continue year over year. So we'll have historic data on kids year over year in one place, instead of in all of these different places that we have to get them from. We, like Stacy said, we have regular meetings to monitor and adapt this plan as necessary. We also have a use of a consistent plan for literacy intervention and targeted supports across all 5 schools. So any student who is in Tier 2 who scored well below the benchmark is getting the same amount of time in terms of pull-out support across our 5 elementary schools. And using the same similar tools, intervention tools, to work on in intervention. Same with the kids who are falling below the benchmark. They're getting the same amount of time in terms of in-class support. Based on schedules, it looks a little bit different, so it might be, 4 times in 1 week, with shorter time periods, or 2 times. That's dependent on like tutor schedules and stuff like that. But kids across the district are getting the same support building to building. The last piece that Dr. Hardy and I are working with Dr. Seiss and her team on is just sort of reviewing the student support team structures across elementary schools and aligning them with this new screening tool and this new data process, and really starting to dig into that in terms of consistency across the buildings.
We just want to round out our presentation by giving acknowledgement to our 5 elementary literacy specialists: Colleen DeRosa at JE, Stacy Forsman at Wood End, Erin Gibson at Barrows, Allison Matthews at Killam, and Jane Ryan at Birch Meadow. We really could not do this work without them, and without their dedication and really their excitement about implementing these new systems. It's not always that you have staff who are so excited about change. We really have a phenomenal group, and so we're excited about what we've accomplished so far and really optimistic about what's ahead of us this year.
I'd just like to add too, so these folks have really taken on this process and building this out with me as a team, but they're also going through the shift to ARC as well, and being real leaders in their building in terms of this change and embracing that. So they have a lot going on, and they're doing it really, really well. And I appreciate them in more ways than I could say here. So,
great leadership.
Question. Questions.
All right, questions. Sean, you want to start us?
Hey, Sean.
Yeah, I've got a couple. What does the assessment experience look like for the kids? Like, who physically conducts it? Where does it happen? That sort of thing. So I'll start with that one.
So they're 1 minute, each subtest is a 1 minute fluency assessment. So for example, if you were a kindergartner who, just looking back at how many different subtests. So if you see the slide that had so if you were a kindergartner, you'd be getting 4 different 1 minute assessments, and then the directions are explained. They're very systematic. We follow a script so that it's the same across the board for each student. So in total, I would say probably 7 minutes. Usually they're done in a quieter space so that there's not the distraction, so maybe out in the hallway or in a spot in the classroom that is of least distraction. And then as you go up in the different grades, the subtests change, but they're generally about 3 or 4 of them. The nice thing also with the new Amplify system on MClass is that students can test out of certain subtests if their scores are high enough on the kind of prerequisite one. So the time can be shorter if it's deemed that they don't need certain subtests, and other ones can also be added in if there are students that are struggling with one. They might go down and say, oh, we need to do phoneme segmentation, even though you might be in 2nd grade. So that's nice too that it tailors to them.
And are you conducting them all, or are the tutors conducting some of them? Like who
I can speak at Wood End. It's me who is doing all of them. I'm not sure if at some of the other schools, the tutors have been, some of them I know reading specialists have trained the tutors to help out just because of the amount, the sizes of the schools are different.
In those
and
schools,
to
the
get them
tutors
done.
actually went to the training and
Yep,
got
that
trained.
is true, yeah, too. But at Wood End, it's myself that's doing them.
And then my other question, sorry, to sneak a second one in. My other question was, so I know the DESE regulation was K through at least 3rd grade, right? Dr. Hardy, I heard you say in the run-up, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something about our previous screener that it didn't, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it didn't meet all of our requirements or
Yes,
something along those
it
lines.
didn't.
Was there any discussion about extending this new screener or applying this new screener, 4th and 5th grade to see if we have missed kids along the way, if there's any regression anywhere. I mean, anything that we would need to think about as far as those cohorts that weren't around for this screener.
That's a great question. We haven't talked specifically about moving the DIBELS up. What we've been talking about most recently is like how we're using the ERLA to monitor for some of those things. But it's certainly something that could be on the table. The DIBELS gives us a slightly different set of information, and especially as you get into the upper grades, it's looking at, a different set of skills, so it could be valuable information. It isn't something that we've talked at length about yet, though.
But I will say, if I can add in, I know, for example, at Wood End, there's a couple of 4th graders that the ERLA data was showing us, or we knew from last year, we had been tracking in 3rd grade. And the nice thing is that even though the M-Class platform isn't loaded up with 4th and 5th grade per se, the DIBELS is a resource that we can just use paper and pencil. And so I've been doing it with some 4th graders that we've had some concerns over, to also have a piece that is tracking their progress as we go. So it's something that can be used in that way as well, which is nice because it is comparing the same thing.
And are your peers doing that as well, so you get the same benefit of that sort of community
Yeah.
practice kind of thing?
Yep, and I think it's more so on a case-by-case basis. If
Okay.
you have those students that you are wondering
Yeah, it's
how
not the
they're,
whole- it's not
right,
the whole cohort,
absolutely.
right?
It's not
Yep.
like the whole cohort, but those individual students that you may have concerns about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Can I follow? I had a very similar question to Sean's. I have a couple questions, but one, in terms of what we're considering for screening younger and older kids consistently. So the state law, it requires K and at least through 3. So knowing that we have deficits in later elementary and into middle school and beyond, what are our plans? So you might not have that answer today, but I'd love an update at a subsequent meeting about kind of what we're thinking for the older kiddos. And then also, we all know that, this one or more indicators of, learning challenges are present in preschool. So what are we considering at RISE for our 3 and 4-year-olds as well?
We do have a screening that's been in place in RISE, but I don't believe it's effective. And the implementation of it has been challenging. So it's something I've raised with Carrie as she kind of comes in and gets to know the staff and her students and the procedures. She knows that that's something that's on our radar. But I agree. I mean, I think really this has to start in preschool, particularly because we know that our preschools are special education programs. And so we know that a large percentage of our students there are vulnerable. And they're kids that, even though a lot of our instruction there is already sort of designed to meet the needs of kids that are different types of learner, having a little bit more information about where those skill deficits are could only help us.
I have a couple more. Can I keep on? Okay, so in terms of data trends, again, I think related to this, moving forward at subsequent meetings, I'd love to see some, where are the trends? So the kids who are in the red and the yellow and in the green and blue, where are they? How are they moving between levels? What does that look like? And of the kids we're flagging, who ultimately, after a couple of rounds of intervention, are we flagging for additional screenings? And ultimately, of those, how many are on IEPs for reading and based instructions? So I'd love to see through this calendar year, what those data look like.
We're very curious about that too, and we were already sort of analyzing the data a little to see how does it change even now? And we do notice there's a difference in the 1st grade data going into 2nd and 3rd grade, so.
2 more for you.
Can I have one to add? Can we go back to data real quick?
Yeah,
Can
of
you just
course.
flag for them why kindergarten's going to look different? And that's not necessarily an area of concern. I know we talked about earlier, like there's very few students in the red. Aaron, you and I were talking about this
Yeah.
earlier.
So
I want to quickly hit on that so people aren't alarmed, but all of a sudden kindergarten gets more red likely in January.
So we are meeting literally again at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for our monthly meeting. And the focus is on kindergarten and analyzing the beginning of the year results. So the beginning of the year results, we gave the beginning of the year assessment in kindergarten because we wanted to make sure going into the new year, we had already assessed at least one time the kindergarten. We had already screened them. We chose not to do it at the beginning of the year. Just because of readiness. We have kids coming in, it's a timed assessment, so kids have to name letters, name sounds as fast as they can in 1 minute. And one of the things DESE recommends is waiting until November, December to do the beginning of the year benchmark in kindergarten, so that's what we did. The middle of the year benchmark, which would not have been appropriate to give in November, December, the benchmark goals are way higher. So we would expect a lot more red and a lot more yellow there. But that's why we want to make sure we reassess at the end of February and March. So we're going to do that mid-year assessment. We think that's really important and a really important piece of data to have moving forward. So looking at that data, we are going to talk as a group tomorrow about like, okay, our plan for 1, 2, and 3 has been literacy specialists only take the kids in the red. That's going to be different in kindergarten and it's going to look different. And then it's also like, okay, knowing what we know is coming up in the mid-year screen, like what information do we want to give, do we need to pass on to tier 1 kindergarten teachers around like, here are the patterns and trends we're seeing, here's what we can be doing before the mid-year happens. But again, there'll be progress monitoring of those kids that get picked up in kindergarten. There'll be communication going out. It'll follow the same trend, just on a different timeline than 1, 2, and 3.
You teed up my last 2 questions.
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, so where are we on the chart that says the pull-out versus push-in support? Where's kindergarten on that, which I think you answered a little bit, but why isn't kindergarten on that?
After tomorrow.
Okay. So timing-wise, and I can speak from personal experience, we're at December, mid-December. Those kiddos who are in the red, or are going to be in the red, in personal opinion, should be pulled out immediately.
Yep.
Not waiting until January, February.
There's not going to be waiting. It actually, when we did it for 1, 2, and 3, it rolled out very quickly. Like, we finished the testing, we communicated, and boom, we started. So the same thing will be happening with our kindergarten kiddos. Literacy specialists have been in kindergarten rooms the whole year. They put that into their schedules at every school. So it's not like they haven't seen the kindergartners or been remediating. They just haven't been providing pull-out support.
Okay, last one, I promise we did not rehearse
Nope,
this
keep
ahead of
going.
time. Do we have enough tier 2 support to do this?
That's
And
a
I know
great
we have a
question.
pretty level budget this year, but just if we find grants and other opportunities for professional development and other people we can lean on to help support screenings and push out and pull in, what do we need to do to make sure we can do this with fidelity?
I think that's a big part of looking at the data too, honestly, and like seeing how it rolls out this year. Like, do we have more kids needing support? I mean, we're really focusing our literacy specialists on these K-3 kiddos that really need some intensive support. But I think that's a really solid question.
Yeah. I think that's really where the beauty of the data comes in, to see like where the need is. And, you know, our schools are different sizes and our schools have different needs. And we've, you know, our model has sort of been like every school, we're in that sort of equality. Everyone gets the same thing. But there may be a point where we need to look at some schools needing something slightly different based on the needs of their students.
Great. Thank you.
One other thing that I should mention, any multilingual learner that pops in the red or the yellow are getting the support from Tier 2, in addition to the MLL services that they receive.
You done?
I'm done for now. Thank you.
Looking down the board. Okay, my turn, I guess. So piggyback off the last question in terms of do we have enough Tier 2, which in the model here is both the literacy specialists and the tutors, depending upon which level they're at. Do we have enough, but also do we have, and in particular, I'm worried about the tutors, but I'm curious about the literacy specialists as well, especially considering we were a TCRWP, F&P district for a long time. Do we have enough background and training that we're comfortable with this? Especially, again, the tutors that we literally could hire tomorrow if we needed to, right? So what is the background? Is there any specialized background and training that we're expecting? If they don't have it, what are we providing in order to make sure that the pull out and push in is as effective as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of tutor support, this is where Amplify as a tool has been really, really helpful, because it really does provide targeted lessons that are scripted based on kids' error patterns. So the tool that the tutors are using is like very matched to kids' needs. I think you raise a really good question about like training and professional development, specifically for tutors that are working with kids at tier 2, and like how often are they being pulled or anything like that. I have full confidence in the reading specialist team, and I feel like any training that they need, they ask for, and like I feel comfortable going to them, or Dr. Hardy, Dr. I'm coming to them and saying like what do you need in order to be able to do this? Do you, like, can
Yeah,
you
and I
speak to
think
that a little bit?
as a team, we've also been leaning on each other for support of ways to pass on and disseminate that information to the tutors as well, so that they're getting the same information across district, as well as just using each other as resources so that we can tap into also kind of helping coach those tutors along the way too.
Yeah.
So resources is my next set of questions, because there was a lot of talk about how you're sharing resources. Can you provide a couple of examples of the resources you're using as part of the remediation, both for full pull-out and some, I mean, we mentioned the Amplify has some of it directly in it, but anything else you're doing there, and how much, if any, of the ARC Tier 2 based on the ERLA stuff is useful or not in this space as well?
Yeah, so we actually kind of termed ARC Plus as one of the resources we're using, where we're kind of tweaking some of the resources or using some of the ARC resources, but in our own way to kind of give that double dose of exposure to it, finding out where in the ERLA a child's weaknesses might be, using some of those resources, but in a different way than the teacher might with their toolkit lessons. So we've kind of termed it ARC Plus, where we've used it in a somewhat different format in the Tier 2. As well as sharing just best practices, ideas, games that are really interactive for kids. But we are really exploring and using that Amplify, which is new this year, where you can actually create groups and it pulls out data and information about where their weaknesses are, what skills are matched to that, and we're using that a lot to supplement the ARC as well.
We also just purchased a new intervention. I don't, Erin, do you want to?
Yeah, so we, actually, they get it tomorrow. The UFly Foundation's lessons, and they're available obviously for free online, right? But we bought manuals for all the literacy specialists. So part of the thinking is like, okay, when we look tomorrow at like our 1, 2, and 3 students who aren't making expected progress, what can we add in? This is a resource we can like add in for those kiddos. So exploring that as well.
So we continue to look, like that's definitely something that we'll prioritize in our budget too. As Erin said, like we're really building in a critical eye as to where students are meeting with success, where they're not. And like when Erin brought up the literacy specialists are saying this is going to be a helpful resource, I was like, yep, let's get the PO, let's get it in here.
Okay. My last question is probably the bugaboo question. So I'm calculating as I look at this, and it's 2 8-week cycles, 16 weeks. That's after we've already started in there a month, at least a month into the school year. So let's make that 20 weeks. If after the second 8-week cycle, we then refer to SST, and then SST refers for an evaluation, 45 days is another 9 weeks. It's at least a week before that 9 weeks happens. So we're at 30 weeks out of 40 weeks of the school year before we have any sort of information from a special education referral perspective of whether the student would or would not qualify for the question. Why are we waiting that long? I mean, what we've seen here, it sounds awesome, shows the progress lines, the trend lines that we're looking at. And the one example we saw, the student is obviously quickly going above the trend lines. I'm presuming not all students are doing that. And if we go back to the data that you showed in the next slide on this one, you know, we have 45 students in that category set, that 49 students that are not on IEPs yet. If you look at the numbers as you go down that list, grade 1, oh, it's only 5 that are on IEPs. By the time you get to grade 3, 20 of the 24 are on IEPs. That means we're waiting too long. I mean, obviously it's the first year we've had this tool.
Well, I would say it means that we're catching those students, right? Because this.
It's the wait to fail model, Sarah, right? I mean.
Well, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Finish your question.
So science has shown that if you're waiting until 3rd or 4th grade to assess and get students, especially with dyslexia, the appropriate specialized instruction, their brains have already solidified, and it will take a much longer time. Solidify is not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Much longer time to remediate than if you catch them and do it in 1st grade or kindergarten. So we should be seeing, in my mind, by the time this chart comes out in the second half of the year, we should be unless they're remediated, which is entirely possible, but looking at these numbers, probably not likely completely, we should be seeing 10 of those 30 at least on IEPs, would be my guess. And if you take the dyslexia statistics of 5 to 20% of the population, you extrapolate out, we're at least, we're well below where we should be for a 1 and 2 referral and specialized IEP for reading.
So what we were considering when we talked about those 2 8 weeks cycles is really the advice that we got in the professional development that our literacy specialists, our principals, and our special ed teachers participated in. The idea that intervention that we're performing, that intervention that we're putting in place is also, sort of a data set about the students and how they're responding to a particular type of instruction. And so that time is not completely wasted, because at the end of those 8-week cycles, we have a lot of information about that student, about how that student learns, and how that student doesn't learn, and what they do and do not respond to. And so the idea is that, yes, we can refer students sooner. Like, it doesn't, there isn't a mandate that we hold off until you've had so much time in the intervention cycle. But the idea being that we're watching that expected progress. So when they meet tomorrow, when they look at the students after 8 weeks, might there be a few students that really have not made any of that progress, that they say, there's really a lot going on with the student. We suspect that this lack of progress is not just related to lack of instruction or whatnot, that really this could be a disability. There's nothing to prevent them at that point from referring that student into the SST process. However, we have received, and based on research, that really after those first 8 weeks, our best move for most kids is to intensify or change that intervention to see how the student responds, and then to continue that progress monitoring. So, I think I would love to see our mid-year results too, but I think what this shows me is that we are identifying in first grade many of the students who will be on an IEP. I see that number jumping up in second grade.
The second grade number is encouraging. 41 to 20 is a big difference,
Yeah.
and it is encouraging from that
I
perspective.
also think that with our better procedures in kindergarten, that this year, hopefully, we see that our first grade numbers perhaps look a little bit different next year as well, because I think that the early bird, we just really found deficient in meeting our needs last year.
So I'm encouraged by that answer, and I think you sort of alluded to that at the beginning as well, and the cycle is interrupted, basically. It can be interrupted at any point in time.
At any
based
point in
upon
time,
whatever
yes.
is being seen.
Yeah. I think we've built in 2 safeguards. The fact that the cycle can be interrupted at any point, but if students reach a certain point and they still have not made the expected progress, that it will be moved on to SST. Previously, we didn't really have either of those things hard and fast in place.
So
Go ahead. I saw Stacy behind the mask nodding that, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit of what this looks like too on the ground level and what you're thinking too.
Yeah, and I just was especially nodding at the point that it can be interrupted. It's not that you have to do the full 16 weeks before you raise the flag of I'm concerned. You can at any point say I'm noticing things, I'm seeing things. And in addition to that, we look back at data too of did this child get intervention last year as well and the year before as well? And, those things that compound over time versus a kindergartner who's just first in the door getting that intervention. So we factor those in our thinking and planning ahead too, as to where we move next.
So I guess the other kind of unspoken thing, and I'm sure many of the parents at this table have heard this from teachers in the past, is historically, anytime a teacher was doing a referral, they were basically not told to refer. Not with this administration, but there was kind of a nudge, nudge, you should ask for your student to be referred. I'm hearing from you all right now that culture seems to have been broken, but I'd love to make sure that my understanding is correct and that teachers are actually encouraged based upon what they're seeing in this to say, hey, we want Joey or Sally or Sammy or whoever to get assessed because we think they need to. And not because we're nudging a parent to say, hey, go get this assessment done because you need it to be done. Are we having that is where our culture is now?
Let me also, I'll add, I would hope so, and I'd also add on this, the other part too of conversation families, I also hope there's a culture of like that tier 2, there's a reason why we have tier 2 as well, right? And we have to also, in conversations with families, there's times where we want to explore tier 2 and hope that tier 2 is an intervention that is actually going to work for children too. So I think I was talking to one of our elementary principals the other day who was sharing, like, I have a lot of conversations with families about what tier 2 exactly looks like and why we think if we play out this 8-week cycle, that this is something that may help be able to get the child on track too. So there's a lot of work, I think, for our school leaders to be able to talk to parents to help educate on the potential impact of tier 2, but also, to your point, also not dismissing that there could be more at play that needs additional support interventions too. So I think there is work on that side as well.
Yeah. There's been a ton of work that you all have done. I'm not trying to say anything negative about that. This is always just kind of my, are we doing enough? And I know we've made a ton of progress, and I'm so thankful for it. I probably can't even put the right words in place. But I just want to, make sure that we're still pushing as aggressively as we can. I mean, I think, and I know DESE puts in place standards, but sometimes they're the minimum viable product standard because that's all they can get past, as opposed to what is the right thing to do. So I want to make sure that we're not just adhering to the minimum if we can and we have the ability, financially and otherwise, to do the right thing for our students. I want us to keep doing that. And Dr. M, to your point as well, I think we are going to have a presentation on tier 2 at some point in the next couple of months just to kind of outline and explain it and what we're doing and how we're doing it and whatnot. So, thank you for highlighting that as well.
Can I just follow on your point, Tom? I think we're putting all of the right things into place, and it's really exciting. And so just not missing that opportunity to do the right thing. We know better, let's do better, and we're doing that. And I think, just having that critical moment, I don't think parents know the difference between tier 2, tier 3. They know that their kiddo is being pulled out or getting reading support. And if they're not seeing the progress that they think they should be seeing, if a teacher or tutor or whomever is saying, this isn't working, let's refer them, and get the, I'd love for the whole refusal to intervene thing to go away. We're not just delaying. Let's embrace it, because I think everybody is doing the right thing. And I just would love to we're at that tipping point as a district, and it's really exciting.
Can I just give a little plug for next week's CPAC meeting? I'm going to be joining Dr. Stice and Allison Wright, and we're going to give a little presentation on tiered instruction, just like a broad overview, but it's something that's come up with some of our CPAC members. They're just curious about the interaction with special ed and general ed. So if anyone wants to join that meeting, you'll get a little preview, I think, of what we'll present later to the school committee.
I'm just going to add one thing too. Something I'm really excited about hearing this presentation in terms of the implication for instructional leadership for principals. I remember when I had started as a principal, a lot of times you would, your children would, students would go off with your reading specialist, and you would hope that the student would somehow make intervention. There was no way to, at scale, consistently monitor progress with clear and measurable goals. And I think something that what we have in place now is there's more accountability around communication with families up front. I think, yes, maybe up front, but also should be along the way. 2, I think accountability at every level of the district as a result of the clear data and as a result of, I think, just kind of the graphs and the charts. You can see how students are progressing. There's expectations and accountability at the district level for us to see movement in what we a high level overview that we saw. Accountability then by the school level, which we can see, accountability by the classroom level and at the student level, right? And I think that level for us to be able to look at one click, or Erin to look at one click, or Stacy look at one click, I just think raises the game for everyone. And I also just think the clear roadmap for everyone involved of here's what we do when a student is struggling, here's what the timeline looks like, here's what the intervention should look like. I just think it totally ups the game for us to be able to ensure that all of our students are on track. And if our students are not on track, clear procedures and protocols on what we do to get them on track. So I am encouraged as both an educator and a parent by the regulations, and then to see the regulations in practice here in a district. I think I wasn't in Reading, for a long time, but I can speak back to when I was a principal in other districts that this was a very different game in terms of how it looks right now. And I think that's a very, a huge win for our students and what we're going to see. I like Sarah's point, though. I like us, this team, being able to present again in sometime in the winter to be able to say, here's what we saw, here's some of the successes we've seen, here's some of the pain points, because I think there should be eyes and accountability on getting all of our kids to grade level and on track. So But I appreciate the team, and I just want to flag Stacy, I appreciate the
Yeah,
work that you and the
thank you.
team of literacy specialists are doing. We know that so much of this falls on you, and just, I think we're already seeing some really encouraging gains. So thank you, and Erin, thank you for leadership and leading all of this work, both Tier 1, Tier 2, and our support, even working with Tier 3. So thank you.
Thank you.
One final thing I have as a request. Can we update the regulation slide to include the 30-day notification?
You want the communication stuff in there too.
That was the big change this summer.
Huge change.
Right?
Huge
The rest of it was there already with the 2 times a year, et cetera. But the big change this year is the notification and inclusion of parents in the process. And I will give you also credit, a lot of credit here, because the only thing we have to notify is significantly below.
Yeah.
But we're notifying of below as well. So I just want to thank you for that as well, keeping the parents in the loop and bringing them along in the process. So thank you very much.
We'll send an updated one with that, and also with all the data in there that we put in later on in the presentation. We'll resend that out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
all. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that concludes the evening. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Sarah, any seconds? Seconded by Carla. All in favor? All opposed, and it passes 6-0. We are adjourned.